Hello and welcome back to A Better World. This is your host Mitchell J. Rabin and we're very glad you're joining us again today. Today we're going to have another very interesting show. We have with us one of the filmmakers of an incredible film that is taking the country by storm. What the bleep do we know? We're seated with William Arntz, who is one of the main men behind it, its conception and its execution. This is a film that no doubt you will see advertised in one of the local theaters, wherever you may be, and do make a point of going to see it because it's actually revolutionary. It's opening up a whole new way of using cinema, and it's for that reason that we asked William to come onto the show to discuss this new genre, if you will, of spiritual cinema. Hey, William.
Hey,
good to have you.
Here I am.
Good.
In New York.
Excellent. Back again.
Back again.
Right. Now, where did you make this film primarily? Where was it shot?
Well, the interviews were shot all over the country. We did this whole tour of going all around the country to shoot all of them in about a month. The live action was shot in Portland, Oregon. And the animation, we had 3 animation houses working on it, one in Vancouver, British Columbia, one in Toronto, and one in South Africa.
Wow.
So
we
we
went far afield.
Yeah.
No.
We went to where the exchange rate was cheap.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, this was really funded out of your pocket primarily, is that correct?
Yeah.
As I remember you saying last night, it started at 120 or 30,000 and then it went up to 5 million.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we got a little carried away because
a little carried away.
Yeah, at first it was going to be a little, PBS type documentary.
Yes.
And once we got into it, I just had this thing that I started feeling there was millions of people out there who really were interested in this sort of material. And, if it's on a TV show, you watch it, it's kind of interesting, you get up, you have something to drink afterwards, you go to bed and it's like, whoosh,
Gone.
It's gone. Whereas the theatrical experience, you're going out first out of your box, you go out there, there's people in the public, and it's much more out in the public awareness. And one of our little ideas in this was to get this sort of material more into the public consciousness.
Excellent. Well, why don't we talk a little bit about the content of this? Because all I did is give a few superlatives, but didn't say much of what it is. And better than my saying it, why don't you say what you feel it's about?
Well,
and then I'll comment.
I've been trying to describe it for months and months and months and months because it's so weird, and I'm kind of bored with all my descriptions. So how would you describe it?
I would describe it as a new quasi-documentary involving narrative. So it's a very interesting combination of documentary style, of interviewing quantum physicists, of course, and they're commenting on the nature of reality, and that then being reflected in a narrative which is describing the points that they're making in the conceptual base of quantum physics, which is, what is reality? What is the nature of an atom? What is human physiology really all about? How does the mind work? Where does reality come from? What is manifestation? These are the primary points being discussed in so many interesting myriad ways. It's just fabulous. And with humor, no less.
Yeah.
So I would describe it as some kind of interface of quantum physics, religion, science, sex, and
rock and roll.
God. No, right. Spirituality and consciousness. That's right. There's a lot of good music in there.
Yeah. Because we really needed to have the music carry it through because it's so. We have there's basically 3 movies in one. There's all this animation, special effects, and then we have the narrative, and then we have the documentary. And we needed the music to kind of tie the whole thing together and give it a through line. And also, on the one hand, you're giving a through line, but on the other hand, you want to basically pop people awake. And and after 5 minutes of brain neurology, it's really interesting, but after a while, people start to fuzz out a little bit.
Definitely.
And that's when you pop them with a good rock and roll song.
That's right.
Wake everyone up and then, take them off somewhere else again.
I think it really worked. The interface of the kind of the studied intellectual side and the play is really good. And now, how did you select this particular Marlee Maitland to be the main actress? What was behind that?
Well, divine fiat. It was behind that because we had sent the script out to a couple of actresses and they all said no because it's a weird movie. No one's going to see it. You can't make it interesting and you guys are crazy. So go away, kids.
Oh boy.
So we had gotten turned down by basically everyone. And our casting director put the script out on something where other agents can read it and whatnot. And Marley's people read it, and they saw it, and they said, well, and we wrote it so there wasn't a whole lot of talking in it, because we had all the talking heads, so we wanted to have it more, showing rather than talking. So they saw it, and they said, this would be perfect for Marley.
Movie.
It's, Marley Matlin action figure. So we had, they looked at it and said, wow, this is something Marley could do. So we met with her. And we had gotten to the point, the three filmmakers, where we had spent years figuring out how to make this thing work. And we had gotten, I would say, beaten down, but in a positive sense. The egos had been so beaten down at that point, we just said, we don't care what it is as long as it works. And we had also started to figure that the movie was making its choices, and we just had to shut up and get out of the way. So this was one of the shut up and get out of the way scenarios, where we just said, Marley Matlin? Well, that's really different than anything we ever thought, but, what do we know?
Here we are in service.
Hence the title. Yeah, so
very interesting.
So then we met with her and just had to do a little mild rewrite, and bingo.
And she was into it.
Yeah. Yeah, she was into it because it was an interesting part, because she really got to do a lot of, because she's deaf, so much of it she communicates with her just little facial gestures, and you just see her go like that, and something's going on. And so that was, and people comment on the film, and they say that, well, it really takes you internally into what's going on inside. There's because of that, and she's you're aware that she's living in a different slice, because she doesn't have all the hearing, so that really pulls people in. So, so the film chose well.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
Functionally, it really works. I mean, it's not something I would have thought would have been...
Yeah, welcome to the club.
Desired job, right. But it does, at the end of the day, really seem to work well. So I'm so tempted to kind of go into the depths of the subjects that were discussed in the show, but I don't want to prejudice it for our audience, and that this conversation would be much more meaningful to them afterwards. But what were a couple of the points, though, I'm going to be seduced by it, that were so most titillating to you, that were included in the film?
The two big ones in my mind that sit with me are, one, the bit that you create your reality. And we go into a lot of the quantum physics saying that, because in the quantum physics, because once you get to the very small parts of the universe, as we say in the film, it starts
looking... Like the stuff that Fred Alan Wolf was talking about.
Yeah, it starts looking more like information than actually solid, whereas we think all this is solid, it feels solid the whole bit.
Sure.
But science sort of, when you peel the onion far enough down, you sort of get there, and it's just like all a thought. So
there ain't much there.
There's not much there at all, and what is there isn't really there either, or it's there some of the time and there not of the time. Right. So quantum physics is one of those, we call it a brain fart. Because when you think about it, you just kind of, that's about all the brain can do, because it's so like the idea of an object being in two places at once. Mm-hmm. So we go into that to basically start suggesting to people that what they think is real is just how they've constructed reality in their brain. And then we go into some of the neurology, which says exactly that. They've done all these studies with the brain, and when everyone thinks that the eyes are, like the cameras, right? And you're like watching a little movie, ain't that way at all. I mean, it's all processed in the brain, and the brain flashes pictures based on your concepts. So this whole notion of reality is starting to get really
very
fuzzy. The other thing is the thing about being addicted to emotions, and there's a biochemical basis for being addicted to emotions, and that's a real, for me, that has a lot of practical application in my life, in everyone's life.
Definitely.
Because the idea is that if there's any emotional state, you keep noticing, like, you're always, pissed at the milkman. And every time someone comes to deliver something, they always screw it up, and and after a while you start realizing, that happens a lot to me, and I get really angry, and maybe I'm creating the bad milkman scenario.
Right.
So that's a real showstopper.
I'm glad you brought that up, because for me that was also probably the most empowering part of it all, because I felt that opened up a space where people can directly benefit from the film. On the one hand, a lot of it is sort of intellectual, because let's contemplate on the emptiness of the atom, and that's cool, and I think that has mileage in it too. But when people get a sense of their addictive natures, and that everybody is in that drama,
Bingo.
Everyone. No
Bingo.
one's outside of that. Then and I felt the film made this point really clear if it was more implied than always stated, that through the power of observation, we can free ourselves from the neural networks that keep us locked into certain patterns, mental, emotional, physical, what have you, i.e. the addiction. So it gave you a way out of that scenario.
Now, if you in the viewing audience didn't understand what he just said about
You'll
about the neural nets and how they connect and blah, no, I won't translate it. It's all in the movie.
It is, yeah.
And we go into a lot of that thing about how the neural nets are connected. But one thing you did mention, you said we sort of implied it. We didn't really. And
it was stated and implied.
Right, and we were very conscious when we were making the film. We sort of had a very of not tying,
to be too didactic.
Yeah, not tying things together because we had a radical assumption in making this film. We decided that the audience was smart. That's very, out there because most movies decide that the audience is basically really stupid.
Well, clearly.
Yeah,
I mean,
hello.
Hollywood.
Yeah. So, so we decided that the audience is smart and basically we don't want to tie everything together in nice little bows because it's kind of more interesting to say, wait a minute, they talked about quantum physics and they talked about addicted to emotions and this neurology. Well, and we know we kind of sense that it fits together, but how? And thus the phenomena that we see where people, typically after they go see the movie, they sit around with their friends and talk for 4 hours. And that's exactly what we wanted. We wanted, we don't, because we're not like saying, okay, here's the formula for the perfect life, and if you follow A, B, and C. It's like, no, everyone's got to figure it out for themselves. So
it's not the answer to the universe. What it's doing is opening up the box of questions and getting people, as you said, and Jay-Z Knight said at the end, to stimulate people to think.
Right.
And that is clearly, I think you've really succeeded in that goal. And honestly, it's so exciting to me what you've done because here I've been working in videography, etc. for many years in the field of psychology and Chinese medicine. And what I see here is the opening up of a genre that is what the world just needs. And I just want to personally thank you, by the way, because I am now seated. I've had many ideas that I've fleshed out over the years, but way too scared to actually implement, and not to mention not funded. That's probably most of it.
Yeah.
But I feel that you have, and I think the sociology of this film is actually the most important thing of it. While the content is fabulous and earth-shaking for so many, some of us who have kind of been around, I mean, I've had Fred Allen Wolf on the show, I've had John Hagelin, who I know fairly well, on the show several times, and I know some of the characters, and so I'm familiar with the domain. But for the world at large, you are opening up a huge rabbit hole that is gonna, I think that you've started a trend. That's what. I think that's like the best gift that you could give to this planet.
Well, that's kind of what we figured. I mean, that was our intent in doing it. Is that when part of the reason that the budget went from 100K to many K was that we started sensing. I started getting a sense of these millions of people out there who are looking for this kind of information and looking for something different. And when I do my Q&As and I say, yeah, we're basically opening up the door to movies that do something beyond crash cars, everyone always applauds because it's so obvious to everyone that most movies are just stupid because they're made for, that's what they do. And
what they call the lowest common denominator.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, that was something that was in our minds as we were doing this, is that if we can, prove to the world that there's a huge audience for this, then we know that suddenly folks like you, who could never get the funding, suddenly people are going to say, wait a minute, there's this huge audience out there, how do we get to it? And then, and Stephen Simon, Stephen Simon, he started about 4 years ago talking about spiritual cinema. And he wrote a book about it. He's been going around the country doing that. He has a network about that. And, and he was really the first one who kind of stood up and said, there's this whole genre, and it's implied in a lot of movies, but no one's really hit the nail on the head. And, he has quite a bit of people. And then there's other people, working on this too. And so the idea was someone just has to put one over the top. And then that's all going to happen.
That's right.
So
that's right.
We volunteered for the job.
I see, right.
Yeah.
Now, just a little bit about you and your background, because this makes it even more interesting. Because on the show, we kind of like to highlight and model changes and choices people make in their lives to show that anyone can do anything. Like as Goswami says in the film, quantum physics is really the physics of possibility.
Right.
Here you were, as I recall, a computer guy on Wall Street. Could you just tell us a little of the story and how you entered this new field?
It's kind of when I was a kid, my friends and I made films for fun. That's kind of what we did, and I'd always wanted to make films. We made 8mm, and then Super 8, and then in college made some 16mm films. And so I always wanted to do it, but the idea of going to LA was very,
daunting.
Disgusting is kind of more the word I used.
Yeah.
So, and I just didn't do it, but I'd always really wanted for many years of my life to be a filmmaker. But then I blew it off because I said, even if you go to Hollywood, you're not going to make what you want to make, and going around on your knees.
Compromise, sacrifice.
It's just not my style. So I just said, well, I guess it's never going to happen. And then in the 80s, I ran into my first spiritual teacher. His name was Rama, and his bright idea, was to have all his students go to computer school, because he said it's very strong training for the mind. And he said, actually, the concepts you need for good programming are very much like doing your Tibetan Tanka meditations. We have to have all these images, you hold them in your mind simultaneously, and then at a certain point it becomes real. He said, in programming, you have to have multiple concepts. You have to hold them all in your mind. It's the same thing, and the benefit is you get a lot of money for it. So he then,
It's a trick the Buddhist monks hadn't cracked.
Yeah. But according to him, it's like when you're in the East, you don't have to crack it because everyone assumes that. In the West, if they hear you're a Buddhist monk, they think you're a wacko. But if you have a big bank account, they don't care anymore because, you're successful.
Right.
So they said, we'll beat them at their own game. So we
Tell
all
me
learned.
about Buddhism, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. Oh, you're a millionaire? Oh, how did you get that? From meditation? Can you show me how to meditate? That's America.
Like this or like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Ching ching like this. So it's not your table over. So anyway, it was his bright idea for all his students to write software and create companies and sell it off for millions of dollars. That was our spiritual task. So I thought, well, I wasn't that good at meditating, but I figured, making money, that thing I can do.
Interesting.
So I went and did that and wrote a piece of software. Kind of from my experience of working here on Wall Street, learned what people needed, wrote this thing, and then went off and sold the company. Turns out I sold the goose that laid the golden egg. Yeah, this product that I wrote that I thought I did okay for has generated over $1 billion worth of business now.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean every corporation has this. It's this huge thing, and I got a little teensy weensy bit. So that pissed me off. And so I went and did a second company. And then after that, I just kind of realized that I had enough money laying around that if I wanted to make a film, I could.
Wow.
And at that point, I started thinking, well, I'm not working. I'm retired, sort of, and I'm kind of bored, yes. And this stuff interests me, and I just started entertaining the idea. And I started thinking there were certain things information I think that the cult needs to be out in the culture. So I started kind of working on screenplays and kind of doing that, and then got hooked up in this and got carried away, and it's off to the races. That's the short form
story. Sure, of course, that's the short form. And then you obviously gathered good people around you who had similar thoughts, etc.
Right.
And sort of just generating. And how long has it taken you to put this together?
3 years. 3 years of pretty much round the clock. Yeah, we went through probably 20 different versions of a script. I mean, we just kept getting ideas and blowing them up. Because, how do you get... we didn't want to have it so on the nose, so it was show and tell. So the talking heads say something, and then Amanda experiences that, and then she gets into a problem, and they answer it with quantum physics. We didn't really want to do it that way. We wanted to make it more...
linearly.
Yeah, we wanted to make it more obscure, and so that the people had to put the puzzle together. So that was a very fine line between being obscure and just like disconnected and too on the nose. So that was a little tightrope walk.
That's right. That's very interesting because it's also engaging both functions of the brain.
Right.
So you have to become holistic just by watching and making order and sense of it.
Yeah, and we light up all the chakras.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, all of them have to go. So.
Oh yeah, right. Exactly.
But because we know about the time everyone gets really tired and overloaded, you just light up the bottom chakra and it's like showtime again. So.
There was a question that I had that the audience will notice in the film, which is that you did not give the credentials of the various physicists. You didn't name them until the end.
Right.
Why?
We debated, this was one of those things we debated for months and months how to do it. And we actually we had that pretty much everywhere in the movie. We tried it here, we tried it there, we tried it here, we did combination things. And at one point, all of us had different whacks at editing at different times. And at one point, Mark took all of them and just stuck them at the end. And we all watched it and we went, oh, that's perfect. And it was one of those things that we didn't even understand why at that point. We just watched and we said, yes, that's right. And it turns out that part of the reason it was a couple of reasons. One, if the first time you see someone comes on and it says Dr. so-and-so and so-and-so, PhD from so-and-so, then you just sort of in your mind, you go, okay, it's a Discovery Channel thing. I'm watching a Discovery Channel thing now. And so everyone clicks into that paradigm that, okay, I'm watching a Discovery Channel documentary. So they're expecting that. And so then they view it in those terms. We didn't want them to view it in that terms. So because you can see when they first come on, everyone's like, well, who's that? You feel people go, who's that? And then they figure, well, okay, the first time they didn't do it was a little intro. The second time, who's that? Hey, they didn't tell me who that is. And the third time it's like that. But after a while, what happens is you stop asking the question. You get so engrossed in the movie, you just start listening. And part of the thing I realize is people want like the government, like USDA, grade A beef. They want the grade A beef stamped on their experts. MIT, grade A beef.
You want to know the credentials.
They want to know the credentials because they want to know whether...
It forms a kind of listening.
Yeah, they want to know whether they should listen or not. They want someone to tell them whether this person is telling them the truth or not. And what we're telling them is, no. We don't look outside to decide whether it's truth. Look this way. You decide whether this person's full of it or not. And this way, and what happens is third way through the movie, everyone completely forgets that they don't know who it is. It doesn't matter anymore. And so then they really just start listening. And then it's interesting at the end when you finally find out who it is. It's like meeting old friends. And there's this, it's interesting because everyone's always like, oh, that's who that is. And it's this very happy, very high moment when you're finally meeting all your buddies. It's kind of like at the end of the movie, the Wizard of Oz comes out from behind the curtain and says, "Hi, everyone, here I am."
Exactly.
So,
unveiled. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it's a kind of a choice that relates to what audiences you're looking to reach, and it's a question that you probably thought about as you're suggesting a lot, because on the one hand, you've got the way you described that you were going, not non-sequential, but you really allowed a lot to kind of come to the viewer and to make sense of things. And in fact, I was really thinking about it, it's almost like a Jackson Pollock painting, in that it's given to you, and then whatever order you find is your own. You are the inventor. You're playing an active role in the game. The only thing about this is it seems to me that you want to reach as large an audience as possible. And there are some people, the so-called cultural creatives, who, you know what, tell us whenever you tell us, if you tell us at all. On the other hand, you've got the larger volume of people who this is totally brand new to. And it seems to me that using the credentials could be somewhat of a footing for them. It's just a thought.
Yeah, it could, but you
made your directorial decision.
And
and I think it has its value. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
It's just I can also see the value of another choice as well.
Well, but then again, we found that it doesn't really. That we definitely want to push more into the quote unquote mainstream, but we find a lot of people who you wouldn't think would like it just come up and say, "God, that was so great," or we get emails from people of just random folks.
You told that story. Would you share that story about Gold's Gym?
Oh yeah. In L.A. there was this the guy who worked on the film he was Gold Gym, and there were these big weightlifters, big guys, and he's seen them for months, and in his mind he has a little judgment about them, right? Well, they're not really spiritual, or they're just pumping their bodies, and he's walking by them and hears them talking about the movie. And he hears them talking about how, yeah, that was really cool, and how there's ways that will help them improve their training, and they're just talking it up. These
Ideas from the
three
film.
guys, right? They'd seen the film,
Yeah.
and they just thought it was. And my friend just stopped and said, "Holy shit! I mean, geez, I would have never thought." And we have stories like that where someone will overhear someone talking about it, then they go and they say, "God, that was the best thing," and the person goes, "You liked it? Oh yeah, that was great. You know, that makes perfect sense to me." So you can never tell.
Well, I think one of the other functions that you're helping to address here, William, is that everyone has an intellectual function, whether they utilize it or they watch Rocky, and you are really like combing the planet, the audiences of the world, and enlivening and quickening that intellectual function. And so here you get these guys who look like they're only into brawn are not.
Right.
They're really, and I think that that's going to actually be something that grows geometrically.
That's the idea.
Fabulous. Well, I want to just commend you so much, and I just thank you deeply for your commitment to this, to Rama and the computing and the selling of the companies and all of it, all the way to this manifestation, because I feel that you have just really opened up a space that a lot of others are going to be able to walk through now.
We sure hope so. I'm really hoping other people make, this opens to a lot of other great movies.
Yeah.
Because
I know you're going to go to the beach first, but I have a feeling that you might have a few more up your sleeve as well.
Well, maybe, but I'm hoping if everyone goes, all these other great movies, I don't have to do it. So
well, even if you don't, the door is open now in a way that it hasn't been to date, as far as I know. And I feel like you're making a big splash. So thank you.
Welcome.
Fabulous. Well, look, you're not going to want to miss this film. And it's playing, truly, just look on the internet. The website is...
Oh, the website is www, you knew that was coming, whatthebleep, BLEEP.com, whatthebleep.com.
Okay.
And then you can go there. There's show times because we keep adding theaters all the times. You can go there and find out where it's playing. And movie's title is What the Bleep Do We Know? I'm in New York, so I could actually say what the real bleep is, but I know that other people outside of New York are going to be seeing this, so I'll bleep myself. Right. I am self-bleeping.
We are all understanding what you're saying. We're on the same wavelength.
That's because you're a New Yorker.
So, right, exactly. What the bleep do we know? Thank you very much for joining us. This is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World, and we look forward to seeing you all next week.